Hello, welcome to another edition of Crop Life Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, editor of Crop Life and Crop Life Iron magazines, here with Lara Sowinski back in our respective office/homes. Laura, I'm glad you made it back to El Paso okay.
Thank you. It was a great trip. I'm laughing because I thought you were going to say respective homes/broom closets because
I have you so worried about the broom
aesthetic.
closet. I mean, again, blurring the background is nice, but I know that some of our folks, when we have the Zoom calls, they actually have false backgrounds. So we
Right?
just need to get you a false background of like a real living room or office or studio apartment setting, something, because I've seen other people doing it. So I know it's capable. So
Or at least a real broom closet with, nicely hung brooms, all sizes and applications.
yeah, this is the modern age. I bet they'd be swifters. They wouldn't be
Right, right.
throwers. But anyhow, so or maybe a Roomba. We may be roaming around. That would kind of be cute. I know there's a commercial out there now where somebody has a Roomba going around and they throw like a tennis ball at it and it chases it across the floor. It's really cute if
Nice.
you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, hey, before we close the book, I know last week we talked a little bit about what we had seen at the Commodity Classic event in Orlando.
Uh-huh.
And for folks who are interested, we're putting out a couple of slideshows this week in the e-newsletters. One went out in Thursday's e-newsletter, which would have been March 16th. And then we got another one going out that should be in the in the newsletter with this video on Saturday. So if you want to see some of the highlights from Commodity Classic from our folks, check out those slideshows for yourself on our website or in our e-newsletters. But before we close, like I said, before we close the book, Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack was a featured speaker at the event. And when we recorded last week, he hadn't spoken yet, but he did give a nice talk. And I actually took some video of that. And I guess, I have two video clips to share. They're fairly long. The first one's about 7 minutes. The second one's about 3.5. In the first clip, Mr. Vilsack was talking a little bit about farmers and farm income and a little bit of the surprise that he discovered as he dug into the numbers a little more deeply. So here is that clip of Mr. Vilsack.
There's no greater representative of that middle class than American squires, ranchers, and producers, in my view. And this came to light recently when I was looking at income statistics that were reported to me in the office of secretary. And folks came in and they were kind of beside. They said, "Mr. Secretary, we want you to know the last 2 years have been the best 2 years of farm income in the history of the United States." And I thought to myself, gee, if I give speeches and I start with that, again, I should probably walk off the stage and so forth. But then I looked deeper into the numbers. And here's what I found. And here's why I'm here today. What I found was that in that record set of years, nearly 50% of our farmers, ranchers, and producers lost money. Another nearly 40% of those who work hard every single day made some money from their farm. But the majority of money that they made to their family, or that supported their family, came from off-farming. So nearly 90% of those who work hard every single day to produce this incredible bounty either didn't make money or didn't make the majority of the money that they made farming during the record incomes. Which meant that the top 10%, the folks who sell more than $1 million of product every year, did very well. And about 40% of those folks are actually investment bankers, folks who only did. So I thought about this notion of bottom up and middle out. It seems to me that we need to look at why that is so. Why in a record year, a few folks benefit, but not many or most. And what's interesting is I went back and looked at the history of the Department of Agriculture, and I'm fortunate I have on my desk back in Washington, D.C., about a volume that was the first report, a Commission of Agriculture, after its first year of operation, after Abraham Lincoln established in 1862. The commissioner fell down here, Isaac Newton, not the real Isaac Newton, but a different, wrote a 632-page book about the activities of the department. And in that book, his first 25 pages is a preamble of his thoughts and theories and ideas about the department. And what he raised as concern was the consolidation of land ownership. Suggestive then was the consolidation of land ownership. It was the lack of a middle class in the great Roman Empire that ultimately led to the demise of the great Roman. Fast forward and you think about the pivotal moments in our history of agriculture and the New Deal, the Dust Bowl, confronted with just tremendous grief and pain. We put together a program, started focusing on conservation, created supply management, and for a period of time, farmers did pretty well. And then in the early 70s, Secretary Butts made a decision that it was appropriate and necessary for us to move away from that system to a more market-driven system, a focus on production. And remember, you may have encouraged all of us to think about fence row or fence row. And so American farmers reacted and responded, and boy, did they do an amazing job. In my lifetime, the productivity of American farming has increased 17 times. It is a remarkable story of productivity. But the reality is that the more productive we became, the more expensive it was. And so it became necessary for folks to look at and to think about spreading the cost of that over a larger and larger base. And with that, we had larger and larger farms that spread through farms. And it wasn't just the impact on the farmers. It was the impact on the communities where those farmers lived. Those small towns, because if there are fewer farmers, then there are fewer customers with that small town business on the main street. There are fewer kids in the school. There are fewer folks living in the community that can support a hospital in a number of dollars. And so rural America, which is, I think, a heartbeat of this notion of a middle class, began to be challenged. So what do we do about this? Well, historically, the focus has been on trying to figure out ways to help farmers stay in business. We look at ways to reduce inputs, for example. And we're doing that. We just recently announced, not long ago, a fertilizer initiative, understanding and appreciated it. Amazing pressure farmers were under with the Ukrainian circumstance and conflict and war. We saw a tremendous increase in spike in fertilizer costs, impacting affecting every agricultural part of the production system in the country. So we announced the notion of looking for ways where we could immediately identify programs and opportunities to increase production here in the U.S. And then a longer-term strategy. We divided a $500 million effort into two phases. Phase one was, what can you do now for 23 and 24 crop year? What can you do the long term to make us more self-reliant when it comes to inputs? And today we're announcing $29 million of grants and to 8 independent businesses that are located in the states of Alabama, Colorado, Massachusetts, Ohio, and Washington, where resources are going to be used to modernize equipment, to advance mining smart practices, to build production operations facilities, and to expand the capacity of fertilizer production here in the United States. For example, Vilsack, which is a facility located in Alabama, is going to focus on increasing the productivity and production of controlled release fertilizer. They hope to be able to increase their supply by as much as 40,000 tons with a small grant that we're providing. There's a facility in Missouri that's focused on microbial fertilizer, where they're producing about 8,000 gallons of that a week. Now they feel with the grant we're giving them, they can increase to 120,000 gallons a week. There's another facility in Missouri as well that's constructing a new plant And with our grant, they're going to be able to accelerate the timeline to be able to, if that's the correct route, 24 route. So we are in the process of trying to work and focus on reducing input costs.
That's what Secretary of Ag Tom Vilsack had to say regarding farmer income in 2022 and some of the surprises the numbers held. And then in the second clip, toward the end of his speech, he actually, I guess you would call this a nice shout out. Thanks to growers in the U.S. for helping to make the country food independent. So here is that clip.
But you do something in addition. In addition to creating this enormously complex economy, because all of us are free to go out and do something other than farming, because you're so extraordinarily good at it. You created this complex economy that has provided the greatest and strongest nation in the world. And you don't get enough thanks for that. You created a food secure nation where we don't have to worry about where our food comes from. You all produce it. That's not true in a lot of countries. China, for one. They have to depend on somebody else. They have to depend on us. We don't have to depend on anybody. That's a great gift. That makes us a more secure nation. And on top of all of that, folks in rural communities, folks off the farms and ranches, they send their sons and daughters into the military in disproportionate numbers. On any given year, 15% of our country's population lives in rural places, but it could be as much as 30% of our military. Why is that? Some will say it's because folks want to have experiences. They want to see what the world looks like. That may be part of it. But I think there's a much deeper reason. I think kids who grow up in areas that are surrounded by farmlands and rangelands and groves, they understand a very basic fundamental principle of life, which you all have taught, which is that you can't be taken from something that gives value to you. How do I know that you know that? Because you do this with your land every single year. You know that it can't keep producing for you unless you put something back into it. You replenish it, you revive it, you nourish it. You have a relationship with it. You are stewards of it. Because you understand that if you do that, it will continue to help you and your family. That is an incredibly fundamental principle. An important principle that these young people understand and appreciate, that when they grow up in a country like the one we are in, that notwithstanding all of our faults, it is the greatest country on earth, and it is a country that provides enormous liberty and freedom for us to be able to dream big dreams and actually accomplish something. To be able to think we can do just about anything. In my case, to come from an orphanage in Pennsylvania, to be speaking to thousands of people as the Secretary of Agriculture, this is a great country. And because it is a great country, each of us needs to do what farmers do. We need to replenish this country. We need to nourish it, and we do it with our sacrifice and our service. We do it by participating in our democracy. We do it in lots of different ways, but these kids understand that because you taught them. And so when we talk about rebuilding the middle class, when we talk about rebuilding this rural place, this is why it's important that we not only focus on West, not only focus on trade, not only focus on safety net, all of which is incredibly important, but that we continue to build more and more markets so that that small and mid-sized producer can benefit, can profit, it can eventually say that their sons and daughters, there is true opportunity, there's entrepreneurship, you can continue to contribute to your country and make a difference in the world by doing a job that is the greatest job, and that is to be a farmer, a rancher, or a producer. God bless you all.
So that's how Tom Vilsack ended his speech to the Commodity Classic crowd. And as you could tell from the video, he did get some applause from folks who appreciated his appreciation for the ag sector and what it means for this great country of ours. So there you go, Laura. That was what was said at Commodity Classic 2023. I know I'm looking forward to next year's event, but we're a year away, so we won't get there quite yet. We got a lot of calendar between now and then to get through. So,
Indeed.
Yeah. So, hey, one of the other big stories that broke, I know this is something that has been talked about for a little while. I guess the folks at Canadian Pacific Railway have been trying to acquire Kansas City Southern Railway.
Right.
which would have and that's those are two of the seven Class One railroad companies in the country.
Uh-huh.
I know there was some speculation that the government might have stepped in and said, no, this merger is not good for the industry. It will create, a non-competitive situation perhaps. But I guess the Surface Transportation Board has now approved the merger, much to the disappointment of our friends at the in wheat growing. Actually got a release from the folks at the U.S. Wheat Associates and the National Association of Wheat Growers, both stating they were disappointed in the decision that the U.S. government's not going to prevent this merger. And a quote here from the United or the U.S. Wheat Associate President Vince Peterson, and he said, U.S. rail consolidation has led to poorer, not improved service for agricultural shippers. In addition, we see extreme disparity in rates for wheat shippers. And he went on to say that the rates for wheat shippers were like double what they were for other commodities being shipped across the country. So again, disappointment on that front. I know you said you had some information to share as well.
Yeah, I understand. Maybe just to add a little more context to this merger, which I think maybe won't be as much doom and gloom as I understand. Again, various shippers and shippers groups certainly have legitimate concerns. I will say that the merger between CP and Kansas City Southern, when you look at the network map for CP, for instance, they have a sizable presence at the port of Vancouver. So, again, we've been talking recently about negotiations for U.S. West Coast longshoremen and how they're continuing to kind of drag on. And then resulting in, which has been almost a year of negotiations now, some shippers concerned, understandably, have rerouted their supply chains, moving what and when they can to East Coast ports. Likewise, I know shippers that are looking at ports such as the Port of Vancouver in Canada and north of that, Port of Prince Rupert. Now, the Port of Prince Rupert really is the domain of CN, Canadian National, but CP really has a nice presence at the Port of Vancouver. Likewise, their network goes into Minneapolis, St. Paul, Chicago, down to Kansas City, where Kansas City Southern, of course, picks up. So there's not a lot of overlap in this merger, which makes a nice dovetailing of the networks. And it's the only, once the merger is, complete and underway, connecting Canada, U.S., and Mexico. So the new CPKC, which we should see in April, will unite, the three countries under NAFTA/USMC Canada. The other thing, to CP's credit, they, for 17 years in a row, have earned the reputation as the safest railroad. And, again, I don't know whether this played into STB's approval, but certainly with the recent news of Norfolk Southern and train, accidents and such, I think that's worth mentioning. I mean, 17 years in a row, and to their credit, likewise, big investor in technology, which Kansas City Southern is also. So I think the safety culture and both railways investing in technology will make for a nice merger. And last thing I want to say is that the more that I read about the merger, the STB, while they approved it, they certainly have a lot of provisions in the approval to kind of guard against, the competitive nature of it. So I understand, consolidation, usually comes with, and I understand, but I think there's some bright spots in this as well. So time will tell. We'll take a look at it as it goes along, and hopefully it'll be a good thing overall, particularly for the ag space.
Yeah, well, again, we'll obviously be reporting on this throughout the spring and early summer as, like you say, the merger becomes formalized and the two rail companies begin operating as a single entity, and we begin to find out how things are shaping up for our friends in the ag space. So,
Right.
all right. Well, Laura, time for your favorite segment. Time for Fun with Numbers.
Alrighty, make it easy. I just got back from a long trip,
This one you're going to have to pay attention on, I think, but you may
Okay.
catch up. You've been catching. I've been saying I've been trying to make these tougher, but you've been catching them pretty well all year. So, this week, your number is $21 billion. $21 billion. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So it's $21 billion. A, the amount of crop losses due to weather disasters in 2022. Is it B, the value of a combined CP KCS railway? Is it C, the amount in grants the U.S. government is providing to improve domestic crop input production? Or is it D, the approximate amount that Lara Sowinski will spend on renovations to her new home?
Oh, man. Really? You really have to win some kind of award. I don't know what award is out there. But if there's one that, captures this, talk about fun with numbers. I mean, it's truly more fun with for me to hear what you're going to offer up for D.
And I don't need an award. As long as I make you smile or laugh, I have accomplished something.
Brother. Yeah, I look forward to this every week. This one's a little bit hard. I am going to disqualify B. I think it's a $28 billion value on that merger. So I'm going to go with A, the crop losses in 2022.
You are correct again, ma'am. Yes, very, very good. Yes, our friends at the American Farm Bureau Federation put out a report. They were talking about the fact that 2022 was the third costliest year for disasters in the country's history, a total of $165 billion in losses. And they pointed out that of that amount, 21 billion accounted for, went to the ag space with crop losses. So, and that was because of several hurricanes and, of course, the ongoing drought conditions that we've seen west of the Mississippi. So,
Yep.
Congratulations again, Laura. You're still doing very, very good on Fun with Numbers this year.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this week's video from myself and Lara Sowinski. On behalf of us and everyone at Crop Life, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon. If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.